Feliz Ano Novo Chinês. That's Happy Chinese New Year in Portuguese. How's my Portuguese? Well, the Lunar Chinese New Year is less than 3 weeks away. And this time, not only Chinese are preparing for the biggest holiday of the year, but also some Latin American cities. For example, the Brazilian city of Recife and Iguazu have listed Chinese Lunar New Year as official holidays. It's probably not a coincidence that China's foreign minister has included some Latin American countries and country in the Caribbean to his list of countries as he embarks on his first overseas trip of the year. That is a tradition of China's foreign ministry over the past 34 years. Now, Mr. Wang Yi also went to Jamaica, as I said, a country in the Caribbean, where he met with the country's prime minister and foreign minister. So why are Latin American and Caribbean countries and China embracing each other? What benefits is that going to bring to you? I'm pleased to be joined from Beijing by Rafael Henrique Zerbetto, a Brazilian foreign expert at China International Communications Group, joining me from Beijing, and from Shanghai by Niu Haibin, director of the Institute for Foreign Policy Studies at Shanghai Institutes for International Studies. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So, Rafael, how is my Portuguese? Rate my Portuguese. Thank you very much. Well, I like different languages, but as I said, these Brazilian cities, Recife and Iguazu, have made Chinese New Year official holidays for the city, and this is not the only place. We're also talking about Argentina, for instance, which has been observing a tradition of celebrating Chinese New Year since 2005, and that's been, over the past 20 years that's been going on. Is Chinese culture and China in general becoming more popular in that part of the world?
Well, you mentioned Recife. I have something interesting to tell about that city. There is a famous Brazilian anthropologist from Recife. His name is Gilberto Freire. 1 century ago, doing his research about the origins of Brazilian culture, of Brazilian society, he discovered that during the colonial times, Brazilian cities were essentially Chinese in culture. Brazil received much influence from Chinese because of the trade between China and Portugal. It passed through Brazil. And then, Brazilian culture has many elements in common with China. And I think this is one important point. And another one is obvious, the fact that China has become the most important trade partner of Brazil for 15 consecutive years. So Brazil is giving more and more attention to China. And so those two factors combined make Brazil look at China in a different way, right? China is gaining more and more importance in Brazil nowadays.
Mr. Niu, is it true to say that Latin America in general, if not true with every individual country, but in general, there's a trend that these countries are looking east increasingly?
Yes. Historically, there are many Chinese and Japanese migrants to countries like Brazil, Peru, Panama. But today, I think there are more and more closer cultural and economic ties between the two sides. In last year, there are around 37,000 Chinese visitors to Brazil. So this is a great sign. There are closer ties among the people. And so I think in China, there are a lot of elements from the Latin American countries in terms of the sports, culture, foods, publications, film, a lot of things happening. So I think there are not only the economic ties.
So, yeah, you talk about people-to-people exchanges. Actually, we found out it's not just that. Over the past year, the year 2023, then leaders, including leaders who have been changed, of 10 Latin American countries, including Brazil, Honduras, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Venezuela, Barbados, Suriname, Cuba, and Uruguay. Leaders from these countries visited China on the heels of each other in the year 2023. Rafael, how do you look at that intensity as a region traditionally thought to be under U.S. dominant influence for a long time? Are they seeking some kind of alternative or independence in terms of their foreign relations?
Yes, actually, we have been looking for that for a long time. It's not something new. The fact is that the hegemony of the U.S. in that region is not a choice of the people of Latin America. It's something somehow imposed by the conditions we face. So, for example, if you see the history of Brazil or of its neighbor countries like Argentina, Uruguay, every time we had a government that tried to weaken ties with the U.S., there was a coup d'etat, there was something to block that. And now we see China as a partner that can not only give us good trade deals, but also that can help to balance the situation in the region. So like we can negotiate with both the US and China and try to get advantages from both sides and be more independent in the sense that we don't need to submit ourselves to one side.
Well, it seems that the Chinese are doing something that the Americans are not doing, for instance. And Mr. Niu, I'm posing this question to you. I noticed that during Mr. Wang Yi's visit to Jamaica, the Jamaican foreign minister or Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade mentioned that they are actually in the building that's finished by China. And by the way, the construction company is from my hometown of Jiangsu. And it's something very interesting, and that building was handed over in 2019. You don't see America helping, countries in this region build their ministry buildings or roads, of course, not that much at least, and yet they complain about China, spying on these countries or trying to control these countries. Mr. Niu, how do you look at China's relationship with Jamaica in this particular case, but in countries in that region in general? What is the style of China's engagement there?
Jamaica's case tells us a lot about the achievements between China and the Latin American countries, not only the big countries like Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, but also the small countries in the Central America and the Caribbean region. Almost all the Latin American countries and the Caribbean countries are showing increasingly great interest to deep their relationship with China. I think this relationship expanding very rapidly and also towards a more sustainable direction. Not only in the commercial and trade investment sectors, but also on this kind of public goods providing by the Chinese government send a lot of assistance to the regional countries to deal with public security challenges, the housing, the children care, health care, but also Chinese enterprises also showing a lot of strong social responsibilities to pay more attention to the local communities they relied on. So I think this is a great image change for the perception of the Latin American countries towards new China.
Well, as we prepare for this show, we discovered that actually a lot has been done over the past years in terms of providing public good and providing public infrastructure under the collaboration between China and countries in the region. For instance, until last September, we found that there are over 200 infrastructure projects that have been completed. Over 100 schools, hospitals, gymnasiums have been built. Over 30 power stations have been built as well. And of course, thousands of kilometers of railway, roads, light rail built with the help of China, providing up to almost 1 million jobs. Rafael, how do you look at these numbers? What exactly are China doing for that continent? And what does those countries mean for China as well? For you, someone who is based here in China, what are you seeing?
Well, I see that in Latin America nowadays, we depend on China for infrastructure. You know, like before, the situation was different. Brazilian construction companies were not only doing that work in Brazil, but also in neighbor countries and even in Africa. And then the United States who decided to act like to the car wash operation to destroy, to break those Brazilian construction companies. And then now there's no alternative, you know. So it actually, this attitude from the U.S. facilitated the access of China to the infrastructure sector in South America. And yes, the feedback from Brazil tends to be positive. I know that people say that Chinese build things fast, efficiently, and also China is financing many infrastructure that is very needed in Latin America. Also in Africa, I met some Africans here in China who told me how China is contributing for the development there. So, of course, it contributes to create a good image of China. And also, you see many state-owned companies from China investing in energy, in social activities in Brazil.
So how do you, Rafael, let me use this opportunity. There are accusations, of course, naturally coming from such close interaction between China and countries in that part of the world. They are talking about China making these countries dependent on China, or China, you know, trying to expand its influence. Do you see it that way? Is that the only way to look at this relationship?
I see it from a different perspective, because the Western countries, they always had they grew up, they developed their economy by imposing something, by for the colonization, for example, imperialism. But China, when you look to the history, you will see, for example, the ancient Silk Road was based in mutual benefits. It brought benefits not only to China, but also to other countries. And nowadays, when I see the Chinese development, I cannot see any signal of imperialism or something like that.
All right.
What I see is that China is pursuing common benefits, you know, win-win cooperation.
We have to leave it there. Many thanks for your perspective, Rafael Henrique Zerbetto, joining us from Beijing, a Brazilian expert in China, and Mr. Niu Haibin joining us from Shanghai.